Awesome. Here we are.
Cool.
I'm so glad to meet you. Like, I know we don't know each other at all, but it's funny. Your name come up so many times when I've tried to pester Eric to sit down with me. It's like, I'm not good, but Kelsey would be really, really great at it. And he speaks so kindly of you, just so you know. Like, it's really, really sweet.
And likewise with Eric. He's honestly like one of the best people I've ever worked with. He's so trusting and personable, and like just trusts me with the work that I do with our company. And he's just been
He's excellent. A good, not just professional, he's a good human being.
Yeah, he's a good person.
Like 100%. Like you talk about people who have big hearts and wear their hearts on the sleeves. He's your man for sure. So I've known him about 10 years, and he met him through Allie, of course, and we just fell in love with the guy for sure. Now he's basically our family.
Yeah.
So before we get going, now that we're connected, I noticed we weren't connected on LinkedIn, so I've been kind of following it a little bit about your own journey a little bit. But for anyone who doesn't know you, I'd love to hear about who you are, where you came from, where you grew up, all that kind of stuff.
Sure. So I was born in Edmonton in the late 80s. And so my parents separated very early on in my life, where after I think they separated when I was 5, and we moved to my sister, my mom and I, we moved to Calgary. And my mom connected with my now stepdad. They've been together many, many years, and just kind of have grown up in Calgary, in Cowtown, and it's been, and I've been here pretty much ever since, with the odd spurt of going away. But I grew up in Glamorgan. And then from Glamorgan till junior high, lived in Signal Hill, and eventually did university at Mount Royal University.
Awesome.
So I did elementary, junior high, high school, university within a 3-kilometer radius.
You're a legit Calgary girl.
Yeah. Now I can't afford to buy in Glamorgan because it's so expensive, but
I don't want to sidetrack you at all. We just did a 50th milestone birthday for a really close friend of ours on the weekend. And we still got the Glamorgan Bakery.
So Glamorgan Bakery, they sponsored my soccer team when I was a kid. So I had Glamorgan Bakery on my soccer jersey.
Oh, I love it.
Yeah.
Like, I don't know how long it's been there. I assume forever.
Yeah. And their cheese buns have been a stake, like, in my life. And funnily enough, I actually went to Mexico and with my dad, my bio dad, and my some family friends, and that family that does Glamorgan Bakery were there. They're Dutch. They're super outgoing, lovely people, and I got to have a snapshot of vacationing with them. But Glamorgan Bakery is the best.
So Calgary's been your home. Could you ever imagine leaving?
So it's funny. I tried doing a stint even in Canmore, which was like a strange experience in and of itself. But, like when I was younger, I always looked to British Columbia and being like, I want to move there. It's such a beautiful landscape, like being an outdoorsy person, snowboarding, skiing, and all that sort of stuff. I kind of said to myself, once I'm graduated university, I'm just going to make my life out in BC. And with a former partner of mine, we were kind of gearing up to move at one point, and I was working for Alberta Environment at the time, and I had been with them for maybe 2 years. The flood program was kind of going pretty heavily, and I wasn't ready to make that jump from a career standpoint because I was just getting a foundation of I'm no longer a student, I'm becoming a professional, and really wanted to kind of build that experience. And so I kind of got cold feet, and then I just kind of ended up staying here in Calgary. And I honestly am like spending a very brief amount of time in Canmore 2 years ago. It made me feel, even though it was only an hour away, rather isolated in a sense that I didn't have like the run-in at the grocery store with people. And being in a town for so long, you know people, you get to meet people, and you get those run-ins, and it was a lonely experience. And even just in Canmore, because you just don't have that same connection. I think COVID also kind of has changed things a little bit with the community and whatnot, that but yeah, to answer your question, I do feel that now, like, I'm very comfortable with Calgary. Calgary's like a big part of my heart and soul.
Mm-hmm.
And I'd like to think that at some point in time I could go out of my comfort zone again to maybe try
Mm-hmm.
another location. I wouldn't go outside of Alberta, I don't think,
Mm-hmm.
just because like Alberta has so much to offer on so many different levels that,
Strongly
and
agreed.
yeah,
Yeah.
like BC is, not only is it expensive, but it's really hard to make a living out there.
Mm-hmm.
And here in Alberta, we're very privileged to have so many different opportunities at our doorstep. So,
Oh, for sure. I mean, the cost of living is a bit better than the Lower Mainland, and the wages are better.
oh
I
yeah.
worked even some work at some engineering companies down in the Lower Mainland for a while, and I talked to a lot of the young EITs, and I just can't imagine. I like the rents versus the wage. Like I couldn't understand. Like they were making probably, I want to say, about 50% more here in Alberta
Mm-hmm.
for these young kids to get going in life, and the rents and houses, everything was so cheaper here in Alberta. I'm like, I'm not seeing it, man.
Yeah.
Like I love it. It's beautiful. I love BC every time I go there. My sister's there, my brother's there, my mom's there. I get it, but Alberta, I'm not from here, but this is my home, Kels, for
Mm-hmm.
sure,
Mm-hmm.
100%.
Yeah.
So tell me more about your background. How'd you get into the environmental world?
So, as a kid, I was always invigorated with nature, just observing how, just like the world around you, you become aware as a, like, I was a pretty, for lack of a better term, ADHD kid, where I just like had a hard time focusing on a lot of things,
Mm-hmm.
where there was only two things that would really captivate my focus, and that was like making observations about the world around me, watching like the little ants kind of walking on the shoreline next to Elbow Falls. I remember it was like a little memory when I was with my mom one time,
Mm-hmm.
and just seeing where they're coming, where they're going, how they're interacting with each other, and how they're interacting with their environment was always, whether it be ants or birds or fish,
Mm-hmm.
it was just always something of interest to me, is just seeing, being a part of their world and
Cool.
being able to understand it. So there was that, and then there was also art was a big part of my focus, where the world could stand still for a moment by just
Mm-hmm.
drawing a picture or painting. And so that was a big part of my upbringing, was art
Cool.
and science. I never was good in school.
Mm-hmm.
I definitely had to, and thank goodness for it, like accommodation was
Mm-hmm.
a big part of my education,
Mm-hmm.
where I got a little bit of extra time on tests because I had a huge anxiety
Mm-hmm.
around just being put under pressure to make these kind of like academic decisions, with things in front of you. And I just was so focused about the end time and not having enough time that it overrode my ability to answer questions.
I'm glad they helped. We had I don't want to sidetrack, but we had a
Mm-hmm.
couple of our boys. They had IPPs when they're coming through school, which is like a,
Mm-hmm.
I want to call it individual performance plan or whatever the
Mm-hmm.
acronym stands for. Anyway, oh my God, what a difference!
What a
What
difference.
a difference! It basically made the difference to them falling through the cracks and succeeding. So
Oh,
I actually
totally.
I thought it was great.
Yeah, I don't think honestly I would have made it through university
Mm-hmm.
if I didn't have accommodation.
Mm-hmm.
And like I didn't have like a someone that would work directly with me, but just given
Mm-hmm.
the elimination of auditory distraction,
Mm-hmm.
and given like extra time on tests, a lot of people thought I was like probably cheating the system by doing that, because
Mm-hmm.
like I feel bad for a lot of people that kind of have very a lot less time, but to just be able to take a breath, let your brain
Mm-hmm.
focus, and like in a typical learning environment, it's very difficult to do. So, yeah, I was. So I guess like kind of going back a little bit, I was kind of faced with a decision in high school. I did. I was taking science classes. I wasn't doing very good in school
Mm-hmm.
because I wasn't able to kind of meet the demands of like your traditional educational system, but I was killing it in art. And I was in at Central Memorial's visual arts program
Cool.
and did painting and all that sort of stuff. But my bio dad, being the very kind of like traditional, awesome, and supportive man that he is, he was like, you need to get an education after high school. And kind of like deterred me from going into the arts
Mm-hmm.
because it is such a challenging environment
Mm-hmm.
for depending on which direction in art that you decide to go
For
in.
sure.
And so I tried to then take a break. I took a year off school, high school, and kind of did my assessments. I worked at a skate shop for a year and realized that doing can't think of the word right now. It's like retail.
Yeah.
Is not exactly the most money-making and best way to kind of sustain yourself. So I kind of went back to the drawing board. My grades sucked. I ended up wanting to, I'm going to shoot for environmental science or ecotourism at Mount Royal University. It's close to home. I can make it happen. And so I ended up I went to Chinook Learning Services and had to redo pretty much all of grade 12, one class at a time. I had to do Math 30 pure, I think 3 times to actually get I dropped out, I think twice because I was just like, I can't do this. But with dedication and focus and eventually accommodation, I was able to get a conditional acceptance with Mount Royal to get into their environmental science program. And I guess and it's funny that it took me 3 times to pass Math 30, where I took a bridging calculus because there's calculus in the program. I took a bridging calculus class, and then when I was actually in calculus, I was getting 90 to 100% on my midterms.
That doesn't even make sense. Yeah.
It's like once it clicks, it just, it's one of those kind of things. It's like a language.
Oh yeah, for sure.
So,
either you get it or you don't, I'd say.
Yeah, exactly. So you have to do it so much to really kind of, but once I get it, then it's good, but it takes me a little bit.
How did you make the jump from, because you said you worked for Alberta Environment before, what's the difference between kind of more the public side and the private side you work in now?
Oh, it's interesting because it was tough so they're very different in that I find with working for the government, you're kind of siloed in to do your role. And every once in a while, they'll kind of throw you a bone on being part of a working group or something like that. But your kind of task is for me, it was doing Water Act approvals. So issuing approvals, licensing, that sort of thing. And that was kind of it. And sometimes, depending on their funding, they would focus on the specific approvals that were applicable at the time. So whether that be when I first started, it was their backlog. They had old licenses from way back when that they were trying to get out the door because the Auditor General was not really happy with how many backlog files were there. And so me and my former coworker were tasked to try and deal with these extremely complicated files. And we just looked at each other and we're like, okay, let's try and do this. And but then as the floods kind of got more, because I got hired on in 2013. So just after the flood event in the winter of 2013, it was pretty much siloed into doing Water Act approvals, flood recovery, and then they had their expedited approvals process to try and get people back to normal. So that was kind of my task. And now as a consultant, it's everything under the sun. Whatever the sun casts light on, you're in some way involved. But I found that my experience with Water Act, because you have this web of resources internally that you kind of look to for technical support. I utilize the same kind of principles in consulting, where as a professional biologist, I can only provide information from a technical standpoint that's specific to my scope of work. I can't pretend to be something that I'm not. Though sometimes you have to fake it till you make it in terms of confidence and that sort of thing. And as much as you don't know the answer to something, you just say, yes, I'll figure it. And Eric actually taught me this, is just make it look like you have the answers and just go out there and just get the research, or bring people in that do have the answers to that problem. And so they both are the same in terms of networking in a sense, but at different capacities. But I found working for the government, it was a bit more siloed into this is your scope of work. So, yeah.
Right on. So I'm trusting you're probably enjoying on a personal level a little bit more what you're doing now.
Yeah, I find there's a lot more freedom.
Mm-hmm.
As a new grad in environmental science, I found my position being very office oriented,
Mm-hmm.
and being that ADD kid that can't like that also needs to be aware of focusing
Mm-hmm.
and being attentive to your job, and just being in the same environment day in and day out and having that schedule doesn't really work with me.
Mm-hmm.
And it actually really burnt me out
Mm-hmm.
and kind of led to my exit at Alberta Environment.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah.
How do you navigate some of those conversations because the environment can be a very polarizing issue sometimes, especially in the context of Alberta and energy development projects and whatnot. Do you ever get sucked into those conversations with friends who are on one side or the other?
I think a little bit, definitely more when I had started, especially since like I in university was a big proponent of, I volunteered at the Sustainability Center.
Mm-hmm.
I was on panel discussions with, during like energy climates or any kind of, if there was anything significant happening in the news, we would try like as a, there's the Students Association that would have these types of kind of learning events or Sustainability Week or whatever. And I always advocated for having a balance.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think I was ever really hardline. I remember leading up to this podcast discussion, I was thinking about back when I was doing a panel discussion, and I had like this gentleman from I don't know, I think he was a student at U of A, and he was very hardline anti-oil and gas.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm like, okay, well, I'm open-minded to both sides of things, and like, how can we look at things in a not just a sustainable environmental way, but a sustainable community, cultural, and like the just multifaceted approach,
a more holistic view of the whole thing.
A holistic view. Yeah. And I understand that, like, yeah. So how do I tackle those types of things? I'm a very realistic person that recognizes the fact that we have an amazing opportunity for oil and gas. And I do feel that there's an opportunity to utilize a lot of that technology for other aspects of renewable energy. And so I'm a proponent of both sides of the spectrum. Oh. And so to communicate that with people, I'm a little less opinionated about it. I kind of pick my battles, but I find that by kind of coming from a very centralist view, I'm a little less combated with challenges.
Yeah, I could see that. But I mean, even to being open to the conversation is great, because I mean, we all have something to learn. Like I've did environment school as well, but you know, I grew up in the oil and gas, the construction side, and you know, I do think we do it better. That's why I'm a big proponent of Canadian energy. Is there opportunity to improve? Absolutely. And I think the industry is always trying to do that all the time. But yeah, I don't really dive down too deep into those conversations where people are strong on one side or the other, because I'm like, man, your mind's already made up. Like,
it's not a conversation at that point. It's
I can't really win. So it would be hard for me to let you leave here without talking about motorcycles. So what's your bike you got, and what's your next bike going to be?
So I just sold 2 very precious bikes to me to buy the bike that I currently have. So to get to this bike, I got to briefly tell you about those 2 other ones. So I started on a 1977 Honda CJ360 Twin.
Awesome.
So it's like the classic old bike that honestly is like perfectly tuned. I just sold it to a girlfriend of mine. She's just learning how to ride. Cool. And so I sold it to her, and then I had the Kawasaki KLR 650 that because I'm 5'3", I had to lower it a bunch. But I ended up, my roommate, I just bought a house in Linwood.
Awesome.
And my roommate, she was moving in, and she's like, I've got this bike that I haven't been able to sell. And I'm like, perfect. It's I believe it's a 2012 Harley Sporty 1200.
Oh, awesome.
But it's like the 72 edition, so it's got Amazing. Like the 2.2 gallon tank. So it's got a itty bitty tank.
Yeah.
I got to figure out the long distance component to it, but it's got like this beautiful sparkly red paint and loud pipes, which is something I'm definitely not used to.
Love it. So I actually have a 21 1200 Sportster as well with the same tank. about 200 clicks, you better have your head on a swivel looking for a gas tank, basically. So it's tough when you're going on long trips with people.
Yeah.
So I just carry an extra fuel thing in my back,
no, that's
basically.
smart.
But yeah, low rider. So Trekker has crotch rocket, but he's looking hard at the cruisers.
Yeah.
He's like, Dad, I've been looking at those Honda Rebels. I'm like, man, it's a good looking bike, low to the ground, easy. It's a Honda. Yeah,
It'll last forever.
So tell me about your bike. How'd you get the bikes?
I've always been interested in bikes. Way back when, an ex-boyfriend of mine, I sat on the bike at the back of his crotch rocket, most uncomfortable seating position of all time. But that kind of like made me feel that sense of freedom and focus that I always kind of am attracted to, is like, what can capture my focus in a healthy way? And motorcycles is certainly one of them. And we had a family member pass away many years ago from a motorcycle accident. So my family's been pretty like gun shy about me riding a bike because of what happened to my cousin Randy. But unfortunately, he was in a high speed incident. So I try to communicate to my family. Like, obviously, it is like you put yourself out there, and I think it's almost like a metaphor for my life. I put myself out there, and you are vulnerable to all these different forces to kind of like throw you off your path. And with motorbiking, it just came from a passion of freedom, and I just find that you're just free to do whatever you want and move around and do your thing. But to go back to refresh me of your question that you wanted me to answer.
I just wanted to know how you got into it more than anything.
Okay, so I got my license when I was at Alberta Environment, and Brock Rush, who's one of the signing directors at the time, was really into bikes, and so we connected on that front because I really wanted to get my bike, and he was suggesting I get my license. Like, he was like kind of like my work dad at the time, and so eventually, like, I'm not going to lie, I rode to and from the office a few times without my license.
Oh, for sure.
Eventually got it. So, and he was hard on me. He's like, you need to get your license. You need to get your license. So eventually I did.
I tell everyone, take the course and get your license, because it's not a matter of knowing how to ride a bike. It's the rules and the nuances and the culture of riding. You pick that up in the course.
I got to give a shout out to Too Cool Motorcycle School.
I've heard, Dean and Meadow went to them. Again, they have a lot of time for those guys.
Trevor is a wizard with remembering names and is a wizard on his motorcycle. And I haven't seen him in a while. Like, I think it was only my course, but I took it like 12 years ago or something like that. It's hard to believe it's been that long, but.
Well, I was up working this summer up in Prince George area, and my middle kid said, Dad, I'm thinking about, taking a lesson and getting my license stuff. I'm like, oh, okay, that's cool, man. Like, see what you could do. And he ended up, took his course. I can't remember who he did it through. It might have been Too Cool. And signed up for his license the next day, passed. And he's been hooked ever since. And our first ride, so I popped home. So he graduated grade 12. So I drove back from Prince George to go to his, where they walk across the stage, June 27th. And him and we did our first ride out to Canmore and just memorialized, got a hotel for the night, got a tattoo. We just did it all, just that first ride out. And then
it's like a banding of brothers story.
It was amazing. And then he came up and pipelined with us for the summer. And then he went out to University in Victoria. So I love the community. I like the bike culture. I love all of it.
It is a very special community. And even when you're just riding and you're waving at randos, like you don't do that if you're driving your Tacoma and waving at another Tacoma driver. It's a very different thing. I had the opportunity to ride solo with my KLR to Smithers for my friend's wedding.
Oh, Smithers, amazing.
It was exceptional.
I love it out there, yeah.
But I'm kind of nuts sometimes, and I think of these really strange ideas, and I sometimes manage to pull them off. I got this rack that was mounted to the back of my motorcycle that would carry my mountain bike on the back.
Oh my God, you're a lunatic. Yeah.
This thing was a rig. It had, so my mountain bike is worth more than my motorcycle. It's carbon fiber, Da Vinci Django, they're 29-inch wheels, which is like, this thing is just stupid on the back.
Massive.
My mom was terrified. She's like, text me every day, make sure that you get there okay. But I had like my motorcycle. I'll send you a picture of this just so you can kind of show it in the show notes.
It sounds ridiculous, actually.
It's absolutely nuts. And so, yeah, I've got the bike on the back, and then my pannier on the one side has like my mountain biking gear. My pannier on the right side has like my camping gear. And then I have this other one on top of it that has like maybe a little bit of like wedding clothes, and then the remainder of the my tent and other things on top, because I was tenting the whole time. And I got like so many.
Oh yeah, like what?
Looks around.
I love Smithers, BC. I love that whole area. I went through there with Enbridge. This is back in 2012, 13, 14, 15, when we were planning Northern Gateway project. It was a liquids line, and it's so funny. That was one town in particular. They were like, no oil, no Enbridge oil, no, and that was about 2012. And by the time we were buttoning up in 2015, there was a lot more signs that said, yes, jobs, we support the pipeline. So there was a bit of a shift at some point.
Yeah.
There. So I don't know what it's like now, but it's a beautiful.
Oh, definitely. Well, with Terrace and I think the different pipelines, because you have Coastal GasLink, I believe that's out there, and a couple other.
It's moving, and I think their PRGTs end up at Rupert. That's kind of up and getting going now, and.
Yeah, it's you pretty much everywhere you drive, you see like those kind of like pipeline plaques on the license plates at the front.
For sure.
And the flags and yeah, so there's a lot of industry there now, and yeah, but beautiful country. Oh my gosh.
Oh, love it.
Yeah.
Love it. One thing I like to ask people when I sit down with them is to share any kind of mentors that have helped them on their way, either personally or professionally. Do you have anyone like that in your life?
You know, I like first and foremost, I think like my mom and my dad, in a sense, where I know that sounds super cheesy, but my mom has been a very like independent woman, where she's just like, you make what you can for yourself by being yourself and being courageous and loving to other people around you. And so her personality kind of like taught me to not be afraid to talk to people, have conversations, like we're like, don't say no, say yes to things. And so she helped shape my personality to kind of be the person that I am today. And my bio dad, he was a big part of like forcing me essentially to get my education when I didn't think I could. And so I think from getting into university, like one of my profs, Brian Sevick, was he's the aquatic ecology go-to guy. I have lost a bit of touch with him. I'm curious if he's still with Mount Royal now, but he was a big part of like pushing my aquatics side of thing. And then he actually was one of the profs after that I would work with in Alberta environment, where we would do like a project with his students to try and make them become more regulatory literate around their projects and kind of simulate certain things. So yeah, Brian, I think with the government, one of my mentors was Pauline Schofield. She's a good friend of Eric's. She now lives in PEI, and we're actually just hired her. She just retired from the government.
Very
and
cool.
She's going to be our regulatory gal for, it's nice to have someone else to kind of like, kind of work back and forth with on certain kind of more complex files.
For sure.
And, I'm trying to think of anyone else that has really helped me along.
You'll probably think of them as you're driving.
I know, as I'm driving. But I have to say those people are definitely key, for sure.
So you've been in the industry a while now, long enough, I would say, that you've had the opportunity to look backwards. Have you had the chance to maybe put your arm around some other people coming up?
You know, a little bit. When I was in between leaving Alberta Environment, I did a short stint at with a policy group for the Whirling Disease Program, and there was a lot of younger staff there that I tried to mentor in one way or another to try and kind of help propel their career. And My friend Chloe, who I haven't spoken to for a little bit, but she's now doing her master's as part of the Whirling Disease program, and she's
Wicked.
working for Parks Canada out by Field right now.
Awesome.
And I'd like to think like when we were together, I tried to kind of encourage her to kind of do as much as you can with what you have to really show your worth and try and pull that extra mile, because it does get noticed at the end of the day. And so, yeah, a little bit of knowledge from her. But I think there's more opportunities for me to engage with like the younger generation. I think like it's interesting with less kind of employment, like there's maybe a little bit less younger folks that I've noticed at least getting into this thing. But I always try to find like, and maybe I'm just not thinking of it now, but really try to mentor people as I'm working with them. I know with CCI, when I was working on behalf of CCI for the Kiara CAPS project, there was some younger staff as part of that project where I was the kind of like the team lead in the field, got to work with younger people and tried to, mentor them a little bit too. But
I like that. It's nice to give back a little bit in one form or another, eh?
No, 100%. I think it's very important to kind of like share your knowledge and your lessons learned on projects. And I guess like now, like we have a new kind of member of our team, Dakota. He just started with us this summer.
Awesome.
And so I'm kind of throwing him into some stuff every once in a while to keep him on his toes. But he's becoming a great younger member of our team. And yeah, he's fitting in pretty well, and looking forward to throwing him into some more stuff in the new year.
Okay, awesome. Have you guys seen, I know you're not as heavy in the pipeline space. I know you have been, but not as heavily lately.
Yeah.
Are you seeing the same slowdown in that we're seeing? Because mostly it's the pipeline construction projects. The larger projects have all come to a close at the same time. So there's a real lull. There's a lot of people on the street right now in terms of looking for work. Are you guys feeling the same thing?
Less so. So I guess like pipeline wise, we've always kind of, because we are such a small group, a lot of the companies kind of look to your bigger companies to take them on, and we try to support
those companies.
Yeah, support those companies and like try and give them some qualified people to help build those resumes to try and get those jobs. But individually, we have a hard time getting them on our own just based on our size. But we actually have been doing a lot of municipal type work. So that's definitely been a big component of my work, at least, is berm construction, flood mitigation type projects. But yeah, we haven't seen a lot of oil and gas. And like I'm doing one SAGD project right now where we're kind of doing more inspections on their watercourse crossings for the access roads in and out of there. But yeah, less pipeline. And I'm curious if what's to come in that department, if there's going to be more in the future. I know there's one project where I can't recall what it's called, but I know an Indigenous band just purchased it.
Yeah, we call it the PRGT. I don't know what they're calling it.
Yeah. So I know that one's currently on like a substantial start is kind of like in question right now.
Yeah, I think they're going to make a decision this spring. So they did a bunch of the clearing of some laydowns and a bit of right of way.
Yeah, it was a bit of a rush to get that all done.
Yeah, so I think they've extended the permit, I want to say a couple of times already. So they said they're going to come out with their decision in the spring. So let's just be positive and hopeful.
Yeah.
And what would you be doing if you weren't doing what you're doing now?
I can't imagine myself doing anything else.
Awesome. I love that.
Really,
love hearing that.
Yeah. If I were to give a thought, I don't know, maybe carpentry. But I honestly do think I couldn't see myself doing anything else.
Right on.
Yeah, I love my job.
Well, good for you for buying a home before Calgary becomes expensive like Vancouver.
Oh, geez. Yeah, we're there a little bit, but there's definitely ways more to go for sure. Yeah. So, no, happy to have made a spot for myself in this city, because it's as they say, like it's one of those undervalued places that people are starting to realize what Calgary does offer for a lot of people, that that gateway into the Rockies, the gateway into the States, the gateway to the prairies, and to a great work kind of climate environment in a lot of ways that really not a lot of other places offer to the same kind of variety. So
Awesome.
yeah, I look forward to seeing where Calgary transitions to. I do hope in some ways that, like, I'm a big, like, as much as obviously my role, and maybe this is sometimes a bit of a challenge with my realm of work, is like I'm a bit of a naturalist, and when you see kind of like we get involved when you're doing disturbances and creeks and wetlands and all that sort of stuff, and I'm a big proponent of kind of like creating these kinds of natural scapes for rivers and river systems, and I really hope that the city of Calgary provides more setbacks to the Bow River where they're building down south of Calgary. Like it's kind of hard to watch a little bit of that development.
For sure. Yeah, it's hard to imagine. Even no one ever would have thought the berms would be like a political hot button until the flood. And it's wild when you talk about these setbacks or berms or flood mitigation measures. Your default is, oh, it's a good idea. But then you start getting down to the community and homeowner landowner side, and it's a very, very polarizing issue.
It is, and when you're building communities in floodplains, there isn't really a lot of, like, when it goes from developer to seller, like buyer, I don't think a lot of people make informed decisions, and they rely on people to give the best advice possible to make the biggest decision of their lives, or one of. And to buy a place in the floodplain, it's just something that I've always been morally against. Like, I live on top of a hill.
Yeah, got it.
But I think it's interesting, like with how Calgary's growing. I think that I know the city prioritizes riparian ways in some ways, but it hurts to see the development on the south side of town along the Bow, just upstream of Policeman's Flats. And I hope that we kind of move away from that development and provide spaces for everyone to enjoy, even our, critters and and just, I don't know, how I'm assuming you've been here since the 2013 flood event.
Oh, we live in Bowness.
Oh yeah, so what it's like.
We live on the Bow River.
Yeah, that's and that place got hit really hard from the floods.
For sure it did.
And so I guess, like, I think having room for the river to do its natural process is such an important thing.
People have short memories too, so
you got that right.
Kelsey, I cannot thank you enough for sitting down with me today, and maybe you'll consider doing it again in the new year at some point.
Yeah, I'd love that. Thank you so much for having me on the chat, David.
Awesome. Thanks, friend. Ciao, ciao.
Okay.